the Forged and Unbroken podcast.
Correct me if I'm wrong. We can start out with like a little shout out. Weren't you RJ's mentor?
I was.
That's awesome. Yeah, RJ
Robert
from Capital
Lee
Training.
James the Third. Yeah, that was
That's awesome.
That was a fun time. Yeah, he was all around great guy, a great rookie. We did get into a little trouble together sometimes when we rode the ambulance together, but but it was good. He taught me a lot, and I don't know if I taught him anything, but we sure had a good time together. So that's one of the really good memories of the fire service for sure.
That's cool. Yeah, you were his mentor, and shout out to him, like Capital Fire Training.
Yeah.
And he's one of the guys behind the Key City Fire Conference.
Yes, absolutely.
Which I'm speaking at here in a couple months. It's they're doing good things.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
you played a part in that in some aspect,
yeah.
being his mentor. That's kind of
sure,
cool.
Yeah.
But, so we got a couple things to unpack here. You were the first career female for Frederick County, is that correct?
Not the first female or career female. I was the first career female to pass the CPAT in Frederick County.
Okay.
And the first career female firefighter to go through an 18-week academy.
Gotcha. Okay.
Before that, it was like maybe I don't want to, but maybe like a 4-week academy type thing where they, I don't think they did much physical training or anything like that. But yeah, that was my claim to fame, I guess.
Gotcha. Okay. And let's dig into that, because
Sure.
we were talking before how you went in this with the mindset of do not make anything different for me.
Right. Exactly. I wanted to do, everything that the guys did. I didn't want any scaling, so to speak. And I loved being one of the guys. I loved being a female in a predominantly male job and able to go toe to toe with the guys and sometimes even surpass what they did. So yeah, I mean, it was a really cool experience. So, I went in not wanting to make a big like political statement or anything like, look at me, I'm a female here. I just went in because it was something I always wanted to do growing up. But that option was never really, I never thought it was available to me when I was younger. I thought my life would lead me in a different direction, but then when I got the opportunity, I was like, well, this is something I really want to do. And so then I went in, and when I went in hardcore. So I think one of the things that, it sounds cliche, but when 9/11 happened, that's when I was really like, I just want to give back and be part of something that's bigger than myself, serve my community. And that's always kind of resonated with me to do something like in service to the country or to the people around me. So
That was kind of the impetus for going down the fire service route.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
What were you doing before that?
So I was working at the Cancer Treatment Center for FMH.
Okay.
Yeah. Before that, I was working for a state senator down in Annapolis.
Wow.
And then I worked for a financial planning firm for a little bit too. And I think I jumped around jobs because when I got out of college, I had majored in history and art history with the thought of going into like museum studies or being like an Indiana Jones archaeologist, something like that. And I realized there were not a lot of job opportunities. So it's kind of like at that point, I just kind of took what was available to me. Sure. And, I met a lot of great people, and I got to say, being on that path led me here. So I don't regret. I got to, walk in different worlds for sure in those different professions, so to speak. So yeah. It was kind of interesting. And, if I thought back then, would I end up in the fire service? Would I end up here? I never would have.
Never would have.
No, because growing up, my parents, I was their little girl, even though I was very much a tomboy. I think my mom either wanted me to have a white-collar job or just marry someone that had a white-collar job. And that was never...
You haven't checked any of those boxes.
No. And it just never... it just never felt right. I always wanted to do something with my hands and be out there and be active. And it was honestly the perfect fit. Like, it was the job that was, I mean, I understand what everybody says, the calling. I just felt like I finally found what I'm supposed to do in life when I found the fire service. So
What year was that?
Gosh, Josh, I told you.
I
I'm not
know,
good at
you're
years.
not good with dates, right? Early 2000s, post 9/11.
Yeah,
Right.
it was post 9/11, yeah. And gosh, that's crazy. I think it was around 2003, 2004, something like that.
Yeah.
It has to be, because I just met up this past summer with all my boys from my recruit class, because we're all at, I wish, they're all at 20 years. So
Yeah, right.
It was 2004 when I went into the academy.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I would have been right after you then. I was 05.
Oh, my
in the academy.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild. Where did you get assigned after the academy?
After the academy, I went to Station 1, independent hose company.
Oh, smack dab in downtown,
Yeah,
right?
like one of the busiest places to be, which was great because, on the job training. I had never had any experience in EMS or volunteer, firefighting like a lot of people in my class did. So it was a big shock getting out of the academy, and then like you're on the ambulance like with one other guy, and I'm like, me? I remember driving to my first call saying, I'm going to be responsible for this person that we go on this call for. But it was a great way to learn. I mean, and man, the first shift of mine, that was the best. It was like the Renaissance, you couldn't get any better than the guys that I was on that shift with. I went there, and I was there again. I can't remember how long I was there, probably not even a year, because then I got transferred to Station 2, Junior Fire Company.
Just right up the street.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I remember still being on probation, so it had to be in that year period, which coincidentally is where I met Lenny, because he was on that shift.
Okay. Then
from there, I got transferred from there to Station 30 in Thurmont, which is just, Frederick County didn't run the engine company there. It was just the ambulance company. So I went up to a strictly EMS ambulance, company.
It's a big switch going from very historic downtown Frederick City, like buildings in the 1800s.
Right.
Very busy, rescue pieces, engines,
the
tiller truck in the tiller house.
Yep.
High call volume, and Thurmont, very rural.
Yes.
And now EMS only, the way it was staffed at the time. That's a big switch.
It is. And, in the city, you have instant response. People are there, at the same time, or rate when you get there. When you're out in the county, you don't know.
Minutes, like many minutes.
Yeah, are they going to be able to get the engine out? And hopefully the medic didn't just transport to FMH, because then you're waiting a long time for a medic to come on scene, or they'd have to come down from PA or wherever. So so it was a different. You had to be more self-sufficient. Honestly, at the time, I really did not like being there. But then I got a great partner, and because at first too, when I was there, they treated me like I was a senior firefighter when I was still on probation, and I had to learn everything, like how to do a logbook, and I'm like, I've never done any of this, and I was like, kind of leading the shift, but I had a rotating, like people coming in, rotating partners, I should say.
Okay.
So I didn't have a set partner for a while, and then I got a set partner, and that changed. Yeah, that changed a lot, and just brought like consistency, and we got close, and so it's a lot easier to deal with certain things when you have somebody that you feel like you can lean on and and trust. Shout out to Scott Borman, wherever he is now. But yeah, really good guy. But it was really, it was a huge learning experience to be kind of sort of thrown out there by myself, and kind of having to fend for myself, because I could pick up the phone and call the EMS chief and ask questions, but for the most part, I didn't have a senior person to lean on.
Yeah, and, that's wild, especially being within your first year.
Because I do remember thinking, like, they're never going to, when transfers came around, they're never going to transfer me. This is the second transfer I've had in a year, and sure enough, and that was kind of frustrating too, because I was trying to learn the area in one's area, and then I get transferred to two, and now I'm learning the area in Twos area, and now I'm going up to Thurmont, and I never in that first year it was a little crazy to try and to get into a rhythm, I guess,
And I've heard that's pretty common for your department, at least at the time, to have many transfers within a short amount of time. That's a common cultural thing for you at the time. And as a little geographic piece, like a lot of people know where Emmitsburg is and National Fire Academy. That's in Thurmont's backyard. That's kind of a well-known historic town with the Fire Academy being there, National Fire Academy. But Thurmont in and of itself is obviously separate. It's down the road, but once you get out of Emmitsburg, it's cornfields.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
it's crazy. You weren't there too terribly long ago because did you go elsewhere after that?
I went back to Station 1 after I did my time there, nice. And I got to pick where I wanted to go, and I went back to Station 1. Different shift, but it was a good shift. Yeah. Good group of guys. And I stayed there for the majority of my career until I decided that I wanted to go the paramedic route. But it kind of sucked for me because I really wanted to, drive fire trucks and pump at fires. And so I was going through driver's training and all that. And then this opportunity came up to possibly go into a paramedic program. And they had just made a deal with Montgomery County. So we would go down to Montgomery County to go to their paramedic class at their academy.
Yeah.
So there were like 6 of us that did that. And then after that, like life took me on a different journey because, then I had my son. But I think we were talking about it when I went to paramedic class. It was all because my dad had just gotten really sick. He got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in July, and sitting in the hotel room, the hospital room, not really knowing what's going on a physiological level, just kind of wondering, like, what does that drug do? Why are they giving him this? And just wanting to know more. That was kind of what led me down the paramedic route. And I had discussed it with my father before he passed away, and he kind of gave me the thumbs up, like, yeah, I think that's a good thing to do. So then I kind of took it on, like, I'm going to do this for my dad.
Nice.
I'm going to just be really honest. I got like halfway through and I'm like, wow, I could be a really good EMT now. I don't think I want to be a paramedic. I went through, passed with flying colors, but during that time, that's when I got pregnant. So when I came out of the paramedic academy, I was put at Station 2, which I love Station 2, right down from here.
Yeah.
I did my precepting all at Station 2 the whole time. So until then, I went out on, I didn't go out on, I went on light duty, which that was interesting too. I'm not a light duty kind of person, right. So it was hard to kind of take a step back and just see all the guys doing all the things that you wanted to do. And I gotta, I think up until the point that I actually gave birth, I was all about, I can't wait to get back on the floor. As soon as I, have this kid, I'm coming back. And then my goal at that point was, to continue driver's training. And one of the goals that I really wanted to accomplish, what I never did, was to get stationed at the truck house, because I love truck work. And I just wanted to get stationed at the truck house and learn how to tiller. That was one of my goals. Yeah. But life had other ideas and, Yeah,
you're working at incredibly fast-paced, highly respected companies in Frederick City that just has an incredible response area. Mm-hmm. Just the challenges that it presents. Really awesome call volume. You're running fires, you're doing good stuff. But then at some point you have to have this mindset shift. What was that like of I'm in great assignments, I'm having my son.
Right.
What is life going to look like moving forward?
It was scary. My husband also being in the fire service, we were trying to think of every possible, before we had our son, of every possible way we could make it work. Because
you're both working 24 48s, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we at the time, it was it was luck of the draw that we got. He was on A shift and I was on B shift. Luck of the draw that his assignment was Station 2 and I was precepting there. So, we did, once we had our son, we did the parking lot handoff, you know, and that was really tough for me. I was not expecting all those emotions. You know, as a firefighter, I think you're able to kind of compartmentalize your feelings here and there. But when it came to my son, like, you know, I'm bawling. I don't like to cry. And I'm bawling in the parking lot as I'm handing him off to my husband, because then I'm going to go on a 24-hour shift. So the shift, it was tough. It was tough to make that shift. And I don't know if I ever fully committed to, I felt like I was kind of stuck in the middle. Like I wanted to commit, you know, to one fully, but then how can you be present at the other one? It was really a tough time for me to navigate, because I think we talked about, I never had seen myself as a mother figure, you know. It just wasn't something that I felt was right for me. And I know my husband and I had talked about it when we first got together. I was not on board. Of course he was on board, but, you know, he was like, you know, whatever works for you. So a lot of feelings were happening at that time, because I really leaned into that identity as a firefighter. I loved being a fireman, you know, and just that was who I was. Like once I found the job, like I said, I felt like this is my calling. So it was very important to me. And all the hard work I had done, I don't think I've trained for anything in my life as much as I trained to pass that CPAT and to be ready for the academy. So all the hard work that I had put in, it was really hard to let that go.
What was the thing that pushed you over the edge, though? Well, like when you go from, I've done all this work, how, like, for you to change that identity, or like to step back from that identity and take this other one on?
I think it took me a long time to actually step back from that identity. I think I was mom with the thought of always going back to the fire service, because
it's temporary.
It was temporary. So I had a C-section, so I was off a little bit longer than most female firefighters. Mm-hmm. And so then when I came back, was on the job for almost a year. And then at the end of the year, I was like, I need time to figure this out. So I took a 6-month leave of absence and did a lot of thinking. And I think, you know, spending all that time, pretty much I was the primary caregiver for my son for that whole time. And, you know, then you build up that connection and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can go back to, you know, I guess it was just a shift inside too, where, you know, wow, this is inherently a crazy, dangerous job that I'm doing, and my husband's doing it too. And there came a point where that part of me was like, I need to dedicate myself to my son and step back. But it was really hard. So I lived kind of in that limbo of where is my identity? What? So I think what made it easier in the beginning was I did think eventually I'd get to a point where I'd be like, okay, I can kind of separate the two, and I'm going to go back and work full time at, you know, for the fire department. But there was a shift, and, you know, holding that little thing in your hand, and he needs you. I never thought that I would feel that, and it was an incredible feeling. But also in having these wonderful feelings about my son and being a new mother, there was also, you know, sort of a sadness and almost a grieving period once I finally gave up, you know, decided like after my 6-month leave of absence, I don't think I'm going back. I don't think I'm going to do it. And I talked to our the chief of the department, who at the time was Tom Owens. Love the guy. He was like, well, whenever you're ready, you know, we're here. And he was one of two people that said, you know, I think you're doing the right thing. It takes a lot of courage to step back from, you know, a job and throw yourself into something that I felt like I was not prepared for. I'd rather go into a burning building than, you know, have to deal with kids. Like before that, when I'd be on the ambulance, like instinctively, like a mom comes out, mom comes out with a kid that's sick, and they go for me because I'm the female, and I'm like,
I don't know what to do.
Directing, like, no, I'm the driver. You can, you know, give it to the. So I never held a kid. I never interacted with the baby before I had my son. So it was just like, culture shock. I remember, I think I told you this story when I was in the hospital and they brought him out. He's this little thing with a bobbly, head all over the place. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I hold this? And my husband just said, hold him like a football. And I'm like, oh, got it. And then
so many of the messages were that, hey, when are you coming back? Or this is going to be temporary.
Absolutely. This is going to be temporary.
Not that people weren't supporting you. It was just like...
Correct. I think everybody
was expecting you to come back to the fire department.
Yep, exactly. When I would see Chief Owens, because then he left for a while, came back. But when I would see him, and it'd be like, 2 years later, he'd be like, if you want to come back, he goes, just tell me. He goes,
yeah, we're good.
We'll send you over to logistics and you can get a... And I was like, like I really was thinking, And, and then I get to a point where like maybe 4 years have gone by and they're having academy classes and I'm like, maybe. You just realize that now I have a bigger purpose. I thought my purpose was the fire department, but when I had Jack, he became my purpose. And while it was hard to step away from the fire department, should I say I don't regret it. There are parts where I'm like, okay, I don't regret it because I would have missed out on so much of his life, so many firsts, first step, first standing, first words, and you can't get that back. That's what I kept telling myself.
Right.
I can always get another job, but I'll never get that time back with my son, especially in the younger years. So
yeah, fire service is super interesting. Like we have these periods where we are home a lot for these long periods, and then we're also gone for long periods.
Right.
So there are times when, yes, we can have the influx of the birthdays and all those things, but then on any given day, guys and gals are missing birthdays. They're missing the big sports events.
Yeah.
They're missing, you're FaceTiming to see the first steps.
Right, yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic. And so with you stepping back, though, you no longer had to worry about that.
Right.
Like you said, you just changed your mission and sense of service from one thing to the other.
Yeah, my purpose was that, and I will give a shout out to my husband who, when this discussion was happening, he said, I know you work so hard to get this job, and if you want to keep working, I'll stay home with Jack. And I was like, I felt he's always been super supportive of anything and everything I've wanted to do, but I was like, come on, man, I'm just a firefighter. You're like a, lieutenant. You make way more money than me. So obviously at that point, but there was no question. Like when I had him, something inside me, a switch flipped. Something inside me changed. I could tell. I didn't want to, like when I went back to the job, I'm like, that house is on fire. I don't know. Like it was like before where there was no hesitation. And I loved being in those situations. I noticed there was like a hesitation sort of after I had my son. Like I thought about what I was doing. I shouldn't say, because you think about what you're doing all the time when you're on a fire scene or on a call, but I really had to take a pause and say, there's somebody at home that's, if something happened to me, this would be tragic for him.
It's different.
Yeah, it's different. It's a different mindset. And props to because I had colleagues who were able to, that they're both in the fire service, mom and dad, and they had kids, and they're still at it. A lot of what that came down to for us was we just didn't have, we had family support, but we didn't have the kind of support that we needed. My dad had passed away. My mom was elderly. My brother had a crazy job. And then Lenny's parents lived in Indiana. And so there wasn't a place where we could be like, hey, can you watch the kid overnight?
Right.
There just wasn't that kind of support network for us. So we decided together that we wanted consistency for him, and that meant one of us stepping back. And so I was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Yep.
How, for you switching into this, having kids it's so life altering in all the positive ways.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you insight and greater breadth and depth for so many of life's struggles. Like you see
absolutely.
things through different eyes, and it also presents its challenges. Like being a parent is freaking hard.
Yep.
And I've always taken you for somebody who's incredibly disciplined, and you've always been or as long as I've known you, an athlete, how did the discipline side of you, what did that look like, changing from fire service? Now you're being now you're doing the mother thing, and then you have these long periods at home while Lenny's doing the firefighter thing.
Right.
How were you able to maintain the discipline to just handle all that, from motherhood to taking care of yourself?
In the beginning, it was a little difficult. I think for like a year, I didn't do anything social, like, because I just didn't want to leave my son with just anybody.
Sure.
And I felt like that's what I'm here for. So no joke, like I was it for a year, and then I started to, then we're like, okay, I think I can. Now he's like a year old, and I think he's a little bit, it's a little bit easier to leave him with someone, because I didn't view him as quite helpless as he was when he was, really young. But taking care of myself, I think throughout my life has always meant physical fitness, physical activity. Well, and it's obviously good for your mental health too. So, I mean, when I don't get to work out, I'm not fun to be around, because I can't,
You're a bear.
Yeah. So I thought it was a great time when I had a, couple month old that I'm going to train for my first Ironman. Like, why not, So I did all my rides here on a trainer in the house, and my runs on a treadmill. Occasionally, when Lenny was off from work, those were the days that I would go and work out at the pool. But that was a sacrifice too, because I would get up at maybe 3 a.m. to get in a 3-hour ride before everything started happening in the house.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of fit in self-care in the middle of all this other stuff that was going on, and why I thought that would be a great time. Maybe it was in my head, like, I'm going to get back in shape. This is a great way to get back in shape, something I've always wanted to do. And I thought that would be a great time to train for a full Ironman. But then, it actually evolved. The physical fitness in one respect evolved, because I realized then, like, Jack was going to all my races. Like, he was in a little stroller, and sometimes he'd be in the races with me, or he would be there. And so then I felt it was really important to kind of be that role model for him to, and, to this day, he's a great runner, but he's always been aware that fitness is a huge part of who I am. So, so self-care for me was more, not going out to get my nails done or anything like that, because, that's what I'm all about. Right. But it was more just fitting in time for me to go out and exercise, and, and that was my church. That was my place where I could think about things and work out emotions, so it was really important to me. And luckily I did have, again, the support of Lenny, and then my mom, even though she was a little bit elderly, she lives in Carroll County. I would go over and visit her, and she was like, if you want to go for a run, because she knew how important physical fitness is to me, she would watch Jack and I would go for a run. So a lot of the training that I did for that first Ironman, I did do over at her house. So I was very fortunate to have that, because I think initially, my mom too was like, why are you, she never, whether she accepted that, but she never really understood that part of me. So
you've done multiple marathons at this point too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And tries.
Yep.
And rucking, that's like a weekend thing now.
Right.
Like, you're just,
I have to always
go.
Right. I just have to always. You just can't
sit still.
No. So, right. But I am the type of person, I think it's the challenge. I love the challenge. I love pushing my body, see how far I can go. It's that mental challenge too, when you get to that point where your body's like not even a factor anymore, and you got to talk yourself into, like, that's always been a unique challenge, a unique exercise for me to kind of really work in that mental piece.
Let's dig into that really quick. Mm-hmm. I know there are a lot of people that probably don't push hard enough. There are also those people that we need to throttle back.
Right.
And I think for as long as I've known you, if anything, there are times when I got to throttle you back.
Yep.
But what is that for you when you do go to a place where, all right, this is no longer my body. This is totally in my head. It's still okay to push, because I just need to shut the noise off in my head. How does that look for you? Because that's different for a lot of people. And I don't think a lot of people know what that feels like.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of, I think that's, I mean, the human body is amazing, the stuff that we can accomplish and do. And like you said, I see a lot of people that get to a point, oh, it hurts, I'm going to stop. And I'm like, God, you have so much more potential than that, you know?
Just the mindset of...
the mindset,
yeah,
right.
of like digging into that, trusting it, and knowing when it actually is okay to continue to push. And we're like, okay, no, I need to throttle back right now.
Funny that there's so many times that I'm getting there in my older age where I'm like, okay, you need to really throttle back. But when I was younger, I would just, you know, I would push. And maybe it wasn't always the best thing to do. I always expected a lot of myself. And I always would tell myself, like, you can do more than this. But especially on the endurance runs, I don't know what it is. It's just something that, like, clicks in your head where you're like, your body's on autopilot, but now it's just, you know, not, you know, psyching yourself up. So, like, you can do this. You know, don't listen to your legs. You got this, you know. You did all the right things, training. You're doing all the right things now, hydrating, fueling, and all that, and just trust your preparation. Your body can do so much more than you think it can. So just kind of silencing all the negativity and just kind of positive talk at a certain point. And that's not to say that, you know, I'm human. There comes a point like where you're like, you do have that like internal battle where the negativity is trying to, you know, talk over the positivity, but it's just that, I guess, drive that I don't give into that, you know, I don't listen to that. Like, I don't know what it is. I often wonder because I feel like, you know, you can't teach someone that, you know, it's in them. And I'm like, where did I get it? Like, how come it's in me? Like, I just push, like, more so when I was younger. If I'm going to set myself to achieve this goal, I'm achieving this goal. There's no not achieving it. Going into an event with that mindset, there was I had no safety net or parachutes to say, all right, you know, if I feel bad at, you know, such and such miles, I'm going to just step out. And, you know, there was nothing like that. And it's just always important to me when I set out for a goal to actually get to that finish line, whatever it may be. So...
Not that you're not playing it safe, but you do kind of throw caution in, like, listen, I've put in the work. I have to trust that now.
Yeah, exactly.
Shut down the voices in your head.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people they cave too quickly to the noise.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
We talk about that even in some of the survival training that I do, just open versus closed mindset or positivity. You know, they talk about being mindful is paying attention on purpose.
Yep.
Being real with yourself, like, yes, there are bad things that could happen, but let's put a little bit of a positive undertone, like what things can I control right now, what factors and variables are in my control.
That's it. Yeah, control too, because you know you've done the work. I'm in control. You know, you're capable. Yeah. The one thing that drives me crazy about triathlons is that the bike part, because it's the only thing that you really can't control. You know, the bike could break down. I mean, I was in a race one time where I got 2 flats.
Oh, jeez.
You know, and that part, that stresses me out more than anything because, you know, not the swim, not the run, it's that bike, because the bike could break down, and then if it, you know, that could be your race right there.
Yeah, right.
So I think it is just about discipline, like you said, being present in the moment. And a lot of times, I can't remember what triathlete it was, but I remember reading their autobiography, and she said that she always smiles, even in pain. Just make yourself smile. And then you start to think positive things. You start to think, I get to do this. You know, not a lot of people would put themselves in this situation, but I get to do this.
Just the way you said that, like just the word choice, I get to do this. Not that I have to do this. This is being forced upon me.
I signed up for this.
Why did I do this?
Yeah, I signed up for this, but I get to do this. There are a lot of people out there that don't, you know, and sometimes that does like feed into my mindset too. I think about, you know, the service members who've given up their lives. I really do. Firefighters. Sometimes when I struggle with workouts, I think about, you know, these guys that were out there giving their all for us and made the ultimate sacrifice, and that plays into my mindset too.
I'm with you. I visualize some of like the really challenging calls that I've been on and how I could overcome them, or how I have overcome them with my team, and just it puts you in a different perspective. And there actually is, talking about smiling, I've read some really cool research that highlights when you do think positive or when you do smile, you can tolerate more pain.
Oh, absolutely. I think
it's just interesting how you're tricking your physiology into doing more work.
Right.
And just from simple variables that you can control. Fast forwarding a little bit, but like, how did all of this physical prowess that you have blend itself into some of the adventure seeking that you got into? Because I mean, it was just a handful of years ago that you really started doing some of these big adventures, right?
Yeah, a couple years ago. I was turning 50, so I wanted to do something, really memorable. So I came up with this idea of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. And the reason I chose Kilimanjaro was because, well, one, I don't like the cold at all. That's my one Achilles heel. I could tolerate it a lot more and talk myself through cold on, in different events. But as I get older, the cold just really hits hard. Yeah. So if I can be exposed to those environments minimally, that's what I choose. But also, at the time, I wasn't into I've done rappelling and like rock climbing, but I wasn't really into, at least in my mind, I wasn't into the technical stuff. So it's the highest mountain that you can climb without, I don't know if I'm speaking incorrectly, but I think it's the highest or one of the highest mountains that you can climb without technical gear.
Nice.
So
okay.
that kind of was, I'm easing myself into that world. So to me, that's why I chose that. But
how high is Kilimanjaro?
19,000 and some change. So
19,000 feet of gain.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I'm laughing at the word choice. Like, you're easing yourself in to
I guess,
a non-technical
I know that
hike,
is true. But you're really putting your
feet.
body through. You're putting your body through it, because altitude is no joke. And I had never done any real things at altitude. I think the highest I'd ever been was when I was in Hawaii and I was at the top of Mauna Kea. And I don't even know what the altitude was there, but I remember being like, whew, it's a little. I feel a little lightheaded, and I think maybe it was like now 9,000 feet. I don't even know, but definitely not the 19,000 feet.
Yeah.
So I guess I just meant like easing myself into that world of adventure travel, which I really love. But I think, it's always been in me. I've always been a tomboy. I've always been doing something. Soccer was my thing for, the first third of my life, and then, then endurance, then CrossFit. And I think all of that, being in the fire service kind of mirrors that high pace, always training for something, always being ready, having that mindset. And so it was after the fire service, it was kind of like, okay, I want to keep that pace. What am I doing? And so I think as I get older, I realize maybe I don't have many more ultras in me, maybe not even any more marathons in me, which that's another discussion all on its own, trying to get right with that in my head as I age. But I felt like this is something that I could train for and excel at. And I trained really, really hard for Kilimanjaro. Just, I didn't have anything around here where I could hike altitude. So for me, it was just time on feet under a lot of weight. So carrying a rucksack with a lot of weight and just hiking up and down the Appalachian Trail all the time. That's
30 minutes from us.
Yeah. CrossFit was a great, CrossFit's great. So much functionality. I think that was a huge part in getting me ready.
The strength and endurance supporting you being on your feet under load with a pack.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much weight are you carrying?
Well, I trained with 25, but over there, I don't know. It was really up to what you wanted to carry in your bag, and I think maybe 15 pounds, maybe 20 at the most. But yeah, I'm always in the mindset, do the hard thing in training so you can excel.
Yeah.
When you actually have to put it to the test. So
actually beating feet up on Kilimanjaro, it doesn't feel quite as gnarly as maybe some of your training did.
Right, exactly. Because it was, I think 11 days, and it was gradual. There weren't any like, super, maybe we gained 1,000 feet. I mean, at the end when we went from their base camp to the summit, there was an elevation gain, but for the most part, it was just like a gradual. And the elevation was such that we didn't have to do any we were acclimatizing as we were going. We didn't have to do any of the sleep high or hike high, sleep low stuff.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Because the only time we really gained elevation was in that very last day when we summited. And then when you summit, just come back down. You spend like 15 minutes up there because you're like, "Ooh, it is really hard to breathe up here, hard to move around." And then, you spend your time up there, like I said, 15 minutes, and then you're back down. The hardest part was coming down, actually, not the going up. So.
Well, let's talk about that, because so many people, I mean, it's a great analogy for life. So many people get worried about the destination or a goal or the outcome, and maybe they don't appreciate the journey or they don't focus on the journey.
Right.
And here you are. I mean, that's a good analogy. You spend 11 days on this journey to get the 15 minutes of the summit.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, cool, I just did that.
Yeah.
Now I have all this work to get back down.
Exactly.
What was that 11 days even like? I mean, that's 11 days sleeping outside, right?
Yep.
Like you're,
Yep.
and that's part of just getting to base camp, and then base camp on
Correct.
up. Like
Yep.
everything that you have is on your back.
No, actually, that was the other thing, that we chose an adventure company. My travel partner and I, we chose an adventure company that basically, like, you only have to worry about your pack, but they have porters, and it turns out a majority of people, that's what they do. They hire porters. The porters carry like their duffels up and the food, and the porters set up your tents. So, I mean, all you have to do is eat, sleep, and hike. And I'm like, this is great. I mean, talk about
it's a nice blend.
It is a nice blend, and it was like the most stress-free I've ever been in my life was when I spent those 11 days on the mountain, because you're cut off from, any social media, news, all that kind of stuff. And, it's so liberating, It was almost like getting back. I was like, oh my God, I gotta like check in online, and people are expecting me to post all these things. But I mean, I know that was kind of like we went off the track there. But yeah, I think a lot of times I would say, I mean, maybe that's one of my mantras is like hiking. I'm like, I get to do this. Like, I'm here in Africa and I am doing this. This is amazing. Like, just trying to take everything in as you go. Mm-hmm. Because again, like every day is not necessarily, promise, so to speak. You could twist your ankle and then you're done. So
right.
Talk about being mindful in every footfall, mindful in every environment that you're in. I took it very seriously. Some people on our in our group did not, and those people did not make it to the summit. But again, I was on this goal, and I never go into things thinking, well, maybe. I'm always in it. I'm going to make it. I've
controlled as many variables as I can.
Yep,
right.
And I'm gonna be at the top of that mountain. I think coming from this athletic background, it's kind of a nice transition to be, you don't have to do super hardcore training, meaning like, all the miles I put on my feet or all these other crazy things that I did. You can train like a normal person, so to speak, like go out and hike, and you train. You're training for this. So,
Well, I think, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I think maybe it's not too bad. Your level of that is probably a lot higher than Gen Pop.
Right.
Because like you said, a lot of people completely underestimated it or didn't train at all or minimal, and they're not making it.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I mean, you're still, how many miles? Is it just one way? Do you remember?
I can't even remember. No, I can't even remember.
Yeah. Do you know, like, just loosely what it could have been per day?
Nope, I don't. It was more like, and I think it was more for me about hours spent. Like I never, a lot of people in our group were like, oh my God, we did this many miles. And I'm like, a mile in a mountain could,
I mean, you could go 1 mile and have 2,000 feet of gain.
Exactly.
And that feels entirely different than 10
doing
miles
a mile.
flat.
Yeah, exactly. So, but, we spent anywhere from 4 to 8 hours on our feet every day. You hike and stop, eat lunch, and then you get to your final destination where, your tent's waiting for you, and you just have so much time to really think about life. And it was great. I mean, the most beautiful sky I've ever seen is on the foothills in Kilimanjaro. It was beautiful to just kind of be surrounded by that. It kind of calms me down knowing that there are places out there that are still like that. Yeah. So, I mean, I recommend it to anybody that, and luckily I had the support group back here to take care of my son, who's now old enough to probably take care of himself, but,
right.
To shuttle him to school and whatnot. And it just makes you appreciate what you have here when you go to an environment like that, like third world country, and you see people that are happy with what they have, and what they have is probably a good family unit. It's not the material things. It's, it's not the money or the power or whatever. It's just they're very family oriented, and they're happy.
And they're in some amazing, like, gorgeous environments,
right,
and they're spending their time outside. They're being active.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Ever since they're young, they're doing, and they live in the, in the region of Kilimanjaro. They're hiking up there, and they, that's their life. They want to become a guide or a porter. And I mean, you don't hear anybody complaining. I mean, they just, I said coming back that those porters are like superheroes. The amount of stuff that they carry, it is superhuman to see the loads that they're carrying on their back, on their fronts, dangling off their backpacks and balanced on their heads. And they're wearing things like Crocs or shoes that have no laces in them. And so it is just eye-opening, the stuff that people can do with little. And over here, you come back and it's very materialistic. It's very not as family-oriented as, as it is over there. So... and then just to be able to live, like you said, in that, I got to imagine that's got to be like a calming,
sure.
To live in nature like that. Like,
yeah, and there's probably so much more immediate presence. Like, we often were very either stuck dwelling on something in the past and
right.
mulling it over, and or something that some stressor in the future, instead of just being present in
right.
the moment.
Right.
And it seems like those cultures are much better at that than we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and not where we were, but in Africa, you could get killed by things right outside of your front door. So it is different. It is a different mindset, and it is always a pleasure to experience that and sort of walk around in that for a couple days, and it's just an added bonus to doing to going on like a mountain expedition, so to speak, is to mingle with the people and to learn a little bit about them. I think that I don't know, getting off topic, but I think like travel is one of the best things that you can do for you or your
100%.
kids. When I was a kid, that's what my parents did ever since I was we were always going places when I was younger, like 3s, 4s, but then when I was 7, my parents, we went to Europe together. It was kind of like Griswold's vacation, but it was fun, it was memorable, and it sparked something in me that, that's what it's about, to kind of get outside of your comfort zone. I mean, we're talking about all these things like the fire department and physical fitness. That's what it's all about for me, to get outside of your comfort zone. So traveling, getting outside of your comfort zone, seeing how people live in the rest of the world really makes you appreciate what you have back home, really makes you appreciate the advantages that you grow up with and the opportunities that you have. And really, for me, makes me, try not to take things for granted. And like you said, like, try not to take things so seriously, especially things I kind of get caught up sometimes, and I have to stop myself worrying about things that may never happen,
Yeah. Yep.
And that's a big thing for me, like, because I don't know if that comes with being a mom, because I don't ever remember being quite so like worried about things before I had my son, but so that's been something that I've been working on, is just kind of letting go of things that you don't have control over.
Mm-hmm. Not a helicopter mom or a tiger mom.
No, no. I mean, and as far as like, which is funny because I feel like in most of my life I'm very disciplined, but when it comes to my son, you have Lenny's he's the one that, maintains the discipline in the house, because I'm just like, just be yourself, like
right.
do
Lenny,
what you want to do.
The Marine battalion chief.
Yeah, he's kind of the one that kind of,
order.
Right. And it's funny because when I do go away on these trips, it's like our son knows. He's like, he flips into, okay, Dad's home, so I gotta, toe the line. And then it's like, especially this last trip I went on, I got a text from him sort of at the end, right before I was coming home. He's like, when are you coming home? This place is a madhouse, because, it's different. Then when I come home, he sort of flips into the mode where, I have this, I think, artistic, creative side. So when he was younger, it was like, we'd be in the middle of something and he wanted to like have a dance party. I'm like, let's do it. Or, right. Lenny's like, he should be doing his homework right now. Why is he doing this? And I'm like, well, he had an idea for a story. And so he's drawing it out. He'll get to his homework in a little bit. And, so
very
with
much
him,
yin yang.
yeah. So which is funny because it's really one of the only areas in my life where I kind of, the lines of discipline are sort of blurred,
That's what make people so neat, though, like having the art side. Your mind thinks in ways that so many others may not. And it's interesting, though, to still have that artistic background where there are certain stereotypes there, but then you have this other side of you that's incredibly like just disciplined and thinking about right. the work that you can put in and the goals. Not saying that artists are not that, but,
right. But
there are certain stereotypes that play into
right.
that,
I do. It's funny because I do, as disciplined as I am, I do have sometimes a hard, like if I'm just in the house doing stuff, cleaning, for example, man, I can't stay on task, to like, if I don't have a structured, like, a structured
creative outlet.
Exactly. And a defined goal, I'm all over the place. So it's funny because, just like everybody, there's just multiple sides to different facets of who you are. And it's funny, but, that creative side of me, I don't exercise that as much as the other sides of me. So yeah. But yeah, it's funny because he's definitely the rule maker, and I'm the rule breaker when it comes to our son. Yeah.
Was Kilimanjaro what planted the seed for the next one? Did you have any idea?
Yeah. Well,
and actually, I know I'm spoiling it here.
No,
was there
okay.
Was there anything in between that and Everest?
No.
Okay, that was the next big one.
That was the next big one.
I know you've done like tons of short jaunts and obviously little things, little adventures.
We probably would have done Everest the following year, but you just have to save up money to actually do it. Completing Kilimanjaro, it is always like, and with anything, like with the races or whatever, it's always for me like, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Which sometimes can be a little infuriating. That it's always got to be a next, because I think a lot of times in the society we get caught up in that. We don't really sit with what we've just done, with what our accomplishment has just been, and be like, really contemplate what we've accomplished, what we've learned about ourselves. I see that a lot. And jumping ahead, when I came back from Everest, I purposely, like, people are, were saying like, what's next? And I'm like, hold the phone. I want to just sit with, this was an amazing experience. I just want to sit with it. I want to think about it. And I don't want to think about what's next, because this was incredible. The seed sort of was planted, when we finished Kilimanjaro. It was kind of like, that was pretty cool. And I didn't know, there were so many different variables about that trip. Like, wow, I've never slept outside for that many consecutive nights.
Yeah.
I've never not showered for 2 weeks, And then, the food, like, you have to eat what they serve you. So there were a lot of things that, like, wow, I hope I can do this. It seems like little piddly stuff, because I'm like, yeah, I can hike to altitude. I can hike for 10, 15 hours a day. But these other little things are the things that, like, that worried me. So knowing that after that, like, wow, that wasn't so bad. That was actually pretty cool, sleeping in a, tent, not having to worry about, looking in a mirror and what you look like. And as gross as some people might think that sounds, it's actually liberating to not have to, like,
oh yeah,
not that I use a lot of makeup, but I don't know if I didn't even bring a brush. I didn't comb my hair the whole time. So really, it was a really liberating experience. And so and you learn so much about yourself too. Like, again, what we were talking about, what you're capable of. Mm-hmm. I did that. I could do more.
Yeah. I always liken it to that 1 to 10 scale that we use in EMS, mm-hmm. like, what's your pain at?
Right.
That scale for some people is actually quite small and narrow.
Right.
And when you do these things, all you're doing is broadening your personal scale.
That's a great way to look at it.
Discomfort and struggle. So what you thought your 1 to 10 was is now much deeper, much broader.
Yep.
Because you've experienced these things.
Yep, I agree.
And then you can lean into the next challenge that life presents to you.
Yeah. So that's a great way to look at it, and it totally makes sense for me. Yeah. So sort of accomplishing that at the end, I was like, I'm up for a different challenge. And again, you go into these things not knowing any of the variables. I knew Everest was going to be now it was Everest Base Camp. Again, we go back to Kat doesn't like to be cold, so Kat doesn't like to use a lot of technical equipment. But it was more challenging. The terrain was very rugged compared to Kilimanjaro. The altitude shifts were drastic because there's no flat roads in the Himalayas. The Nepalese people would joke, and somebody on our trip would be like, "Is this next part like flat?" And they're like, "Yeah, Nepalese flat," which means maybe you get some rolling hills, but usually it was just straight up, straight down. You're gaining elevation quickly, or you're losing elevation quickly. So it was a different beast entirely. And then when you get to a certain elevation, you're staying at that elevation. So it was my first time sleeping at 17,000 plus feet. Wow. And then you realize wow, I take a lot of things for granted. Like it's hard to breathe. Like my body works so well for me, and then you get at 17,000 feet, and
totally different.
It was totally different. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I woke up the next morning. I had a little bit of a nosebleed. Mm-hmm. It didn't dawn on me at first. Like I just kind of wiped and oh, the air's dry. And then I remember we had to pack our stuff up. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I have double vision. I'm seeing like tracer rounds of my hands coming. Wow. Oh my gosh. I knew, but I didn't panic because I knew once we get down out of altitude, I'll be fine. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting to see okay, well, I have definitely tested the limits of what my body is used to. That's interesting. It's always humbling to be in a situation like that too, because a lot of times I think of myself kind of as invincible, I guess, and a lot of things that have happened recently make me realize that I'm not quite as invincible as I thought. But that was one instance where you're like, you can really push your body to do a lot of things, but when it's not right, it's going to let you know.
Yeah.
So
and to be clear, and maybe I'm putting you on the spot again with numbers, you didn't summit Everest, but you're doing a lot of basically a lot of the trails around Everest. Mm-hmm. So you're hitting different base camps throughout the Everest region.
So
mileage, and you already said you're up at 17,000 plus feet.
Mm-hmm.
That's really freaking high. I don't think we have that in the continental United States.
No, I don't think
it's
so.
14, 15, right?
Right.
You talk about some elevation gain. How many? Do you remember total mileage for the trail, or how long were you out there?
That's interesting. So we were there for
some of the particulars.
Yeah. So we were out there for around 14 days. There was one rest day built in, one acclimatization day built in. We had to adjust because there was, for certain reasons, flights were delayed, so we missed our flight coming into Lukla, which is where pretty much every Everest expedition begins. So we were late getting into Lukla, but I think round trip, we were almost close to 100. I think we were 90 something. And then in the grand scheme of things, I'm I ran 100 miles. That's not that. But again, mountain mileage is so much different than just being on flat road, or even being, in the Catoctin Mountains. Is just a different ballgame. And but I loved the challenge. There were days where you couldn't wipe the smile off my face because I'm in the Himalayas, man, and this is awesome. I don't want to say it because I don't want to sound like, oh yeah, it was nothing to me. It was challenging.
But manageable.
manageable. And so a lot of people were like, oh, what kind of training did you have to do? And I did as much as I could because, I was coming back from a surgery that I had. So
right.
It was a very nervous time going into this trip because you're wondering, like, is my hip going to fall off? Am I going to be able to make it? Am I going to be limping this whole way?
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you had labral tears. You had to have your labrum fixed in your hips. That's a pretty major thing. There's good recovery now for it.
Right.
I mean, in the grand scheme of pretty invasive surgeries, but you had that on the heels of Kilimanjaro. You have these major operations. Mm-hmm. You did the PT and the necessary work.
Right.
And then the next big thing out the gate after major labral hip surgery is
go climb Everest. That's a great idea.
Climbing Everest.
Yeah.
Right. So managing that
on top
of it.
And that kind of feeds into what we were talking about before. Kind of getting to the point in my life where I realized that I'm not as invincible as I thought. And it's good though. It really humbles you again and makes you realize just all the things that you have, all the things I've been able to do. I'll be 53 years old this year, and I got to 52 without major surgeries or broken bones. And I'm like, while I was bummed, I'm like, hey, I got a pretty good run without, without having to do any kind of major rehab or anything like that. Yeah, that was, as you can probably imagine, I don't like being sidelined. I don't like, how should I say, being in a position where, like, I love to go to the gym. That was my medicine. Mm-hmm. If I didn't go to the gym every day, I would have probably gone insane or maybe killed a member of my family. But, it was difficult for me to be over in my little area and watch the class go on.
While you're doing your PT
because I'm like, I want to do that, but also there's that community feeling with CrossFit that we always know, like, I want to be a part of that. So that was really hard. There are a lot of things that I talk about being in a place where you feel uncomfortable, just having to rely on other people to, get you from point A to point B because you can't drive and you're on crutches. I'm not very good at asking for help all the time, but, I got pretty good at it. And I have such a good support network with my friends and family here that a lot of times I didn't have to ask for it. They just knew what I needed and they just did it.
That's awesome. But between rehab and CrossFit and getting under a pack again, rucking, that's what got you back into shape.
Yes. Yeah. I was on like a timetable too because I had the surgery in February, so it's almost a year, and I really wasn't able to. I really shouldn't have been doing. I probably maybe got back to it a little sooner than my physical therapist wanted me to, but I really didn't get back into like training mode until maybe July. And so then, the trip left in October. So there's not a lot of, whereas Kilimanjaro, I knew it was happening. I started training in January for a trip in August. So now I have like July to October.
So in 8 months, you went from hip surgery, major labrum tears, to hiking Everest.
Right.
Yeah. That's pretty baller.
Yeah. So, a lot of that, too, was what we talked about. It was mindset going into it. Once I left the U.S. and I was bound for, Nepal, there was no, I'm not going to make it. What happens if this? It was like, well, I guess you're going to have to just crawl there, or because you're not going to, you're not going to Mount Everest and not make the final destination. Yeah. So there was a huge, more so than Kilimanjaro, there was a huge mental piece to this training that there wasn't with the other one, where, of course it was part of it, but a lot of it was just positive self-talk and also, telling myself, like, look, you've done all these crazy things before. Your body is used to this kind of stuff. It will rise to the challenge. And
yeah, that's awesome.
And it did, I had, I think, two days in the very beginning, which the first 2 days were like, really, like, I won't say a shock to the system, but it was like a gut check. You're like, whoa, like, ups and downs. And And at that point, because you're in the more populated area, I mean, you're in the middle of nowhere, but you're in the more populated area, like a lot of those ups and downs, like there were steps. Of course, they're like giant steps, but they're steps carved into the mountain. So you really had, you didn't have to like, go over these rocky, rugged terrain. You were going up and down steps, but the elevation was just like, it was just crazy. You get up and you're like, oh crap, we gotta go back down. It's like back up. So it was a gut check the first 2 days, and I was having some issues now, not in the surgery area. I think it's just like what I'm still kind of suffering from, just residual, like whether it's tendonitis or a tight muscle.
Arthritis probably.
Yeah, so I had like a couple issues in my lower back where I just sort of, quite honestly, we were taking a break one day and I found like a rock that's the size of like a lacrosse ball, and I just like laid into that, and I'm like, oh, I feel so good. I did it the second day, and then by the third day I was like, I didn't feel any pain. I haven't gone that long without pain, which was crazy because, I was pain-free for 12 out of 14 days doing this crazy, even if you train here, you can't train for that kind of up and down. You can't train for, that kind of rugged terrain. To be able to do that pain-free, I was just astounded, and I kind of came back thinking like, oh, the mountains have healed me. Not the case. My surgery went well. It did what it was supposed to do, and I'm just having some, I guess, muscle issues, tendonitis, arthritis, that type of stuff. So again, it's kind of, I'm in a place right now where I'm trying to be all right doing what I can do, if that makes sense. Like, I always joke that my motto at the gym, especially leading up to Everest, was don't be dumb. You might be able to lift that weight, but, should you? And that's never really come into my thinking before this. So I'm really sort of taking that stuff into consideration. It's hard for me because I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm pretty competitive. So it's hard for me to and I just try and tell myself, don't look at what everybody else is. This is your race. This is your competition. You're in competition with yourself, and don't worry about everybody else. Because I always say, I used to say when I was training in the swimming pool for triathlons, and people would just be whizzing by, and I'd feel like towing a cement block behind me. I just kept in my head comparison is the thief of joy, and that resonates with me. That's one of my other mottos. But right now, sort of realizing that it's even hard for me to say it. I probably can't do the things that I used to do, or I probably shouldn't do the things. So that's kind of why things are, for me, they're sort of evolving from running all these miles into rucking now, and just being mindful when I'm doing a CrossFit workout. I'm going to get the same stimulus, so maybe I don't have to lift the RX weight. But every day it is a challenge for me to get in that mindset, in that mind frame that
what your new normal is.
Right. Yeah. I'm just sort of feeling what my new normal is. So
you see that going back to some of the things you said about injury. Movement is medicine, and there are definitely times when whatever the thing that injured you, sometimes it's actually okay to do those things. People get so worried about, oh, I hurt my back deadlifting. At a certain point, it's actually, you need to start just deadlifting again and work through that to train your body that it's safe and it's okay. And doing the things that hurt you has actually been very healing. But then there's also that side of the more dramatic circles might call it death of an athlete, where you accomplished these athletic endeavors when you were younger. Our bodies are going to change. That's normal part of life. And what the new normal is and how you reconcile with that takes a mental toll on a lot of people. Oh, yeah. So to realize that that's totally part of the process and it's normal, and to also celebrate what you're doing in your 50s.
Right. Yeah.
There aren't people in their 20s doing this.
Right.
So I think when you zoom out and celebrate that, it's pretty amazing. What did you learn about yourself coming off of Everest?
I guess really sort of to kind of trust myself more in that realm. I feel like sometimes I go into things and trusting that like your body can do this, especially coming off an injury. It's kind of like, look at that. Wow. I did the rehab, cause I couldn't get back fast enough, but I was like, like we say at the gym, trust the process. Yeah. So I learned that I think the biggest thing for me was I can do less and it's okay, and I can still do all these crazy things. Because like you said, on the scale probably, I mean, my husband says it all the time, like what's normal to you is way different than what's normal to another person. Right.
Right.
And feeling like, I mean, always these trips are always, they make you feel like self-reliant, like no matter what happens, I can definitely manage the stress, I can.
It's really powerful.
Yeah, I can adapt and overcome. Just kind of like just marveling at what your body can really accomplish. Like being at altitude, that was new, and changing within that environment, meaning like you can't go running up, you can't do like a 6-minute mile running up the side of a mountain at 17,000 feet. You're walking like super slow. Like on Kilimanjaro, they call it pole, which means slow. Mm-hmm. So you're just walking almost like you're a moon man walking on the, it's just, so you sort of have to adapt. And then, and again, trust the process, trust the people that have come before and that are like, hey, if you do this, you're going to be fine, listening to the guides. And
yeah, that's pretty important.
Yeah. So, but it is, and we were talking about it, I feel like the emotions that I'm having now, like trying to transition from, I guess we just say it, a younger athlete to an older athlete, is similar to like the limbo that I was in switching out of the fire service to being a mom. It's the same kind of feelings, like leaving a certain identity behind and trying to get right with this new identity. So, I mean, that's interesting because I didn't even really think about it until we were just talking about it. And I think my goals now are shifting a little bit in terms of, I mean, I'm still going to always want to have that, finish line or goal or whatever. But I think it sounds kind of hokey, but being an older parent, I want to be around a lot longer. So my health is really important. Not only being that role model for my son about how health and wellness is super duper important, but I also want to be around for him, and not only be around for him, but also be able to do things with him and not be like a drain on him or society where he has to like take care of me because I'm an invalid. So I feel that it's so important to maintain some level of activity, from here until my last breath. And I sort of agree with you. A lot of people just maybe feel a little bit of pain or discomfort and they just stop. And I feel like that's the worst thing. Like you were saying, when you have an injury, you have to work that. That's like the worst thing you can do. Just stop. And
there's really cool research that talks about how like your genetic makeup stops. I'm going to say this wrong. Like you kind of stagnate your development in your late 20s, right? That's kind of like your peak.
Oh yeah.
Like hormonally, strength, bone muscle structure, you kind of peak in your late 20s, right? There's some also cool research, like in your right around 40, like 35 to 45 is kind of the make or break to how you're going to spend the rest of your life, though. Mm-hmm. And for people that, I mean, it's easy to, we feel it. We can rebound from drinking over the weekends when we're in our 20s, right?
Yeah.
And it's different as we get older.
Oh, yeah.
But somewhere in those 30s and 40s, though, is that crux of, okay, my life is now going to start following a sedentary path, or it's going to follow this path where I still remain active. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying here you have to do CrossFit or you have to hike Everest.
Right.
But if you want to not be a burden, if you want to maintain some physical fitness, if you want to not be the person laid up in a nursing home, God forbid anything crazy happens, the time is now. And I think to your credit, you did those things, and here you are in your 50s doing Everest and Kilimanjaro when, like I said before, you look at so many people today and they are not capable of that. That's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm a firm believer that really you can do anything you put your mind to. You just got to put in the time and the effort, have a game plan, be your own biggest cheerleader in the process. It's funny because when I came back from Everest and people again were like asking like, what kind of training did you do? I don't know. It seems like a really tough thing. And I'm like, you know what? Anybody can do it. I believe anybody can do it. But the amount of time and effort you put into that training is going to determine if you suffer or if you have a good time and you're able to enjoy the journey. Again, I was in a group.
That's a great way to put it.
I was in a group, again, where one of the people in the group just, I don't know what they thought, but they did not prepare and they didn't make it all the way. I never go into a journey or a goal sort of half-assed. I'm always thinking about sometimes even working backwards from that goal, like, okay, this is where I want to be. What do I have to do? We do that a lot in CrossFit workouts too.
Yeah, sure, right.
This is the weight I want to get to. Right. Let me work back and see where I need to start. So I think having a good plan of attack and a good mindset, like even a sedentary person, if they put their mind to it, now they're not going to probably be able to go and do it like next week, but if they put their mind to it, I think anybody is capable, like the human body is capable, like I said, of so much more than a lot of people give it credit for. It's an amazing, quote unquote machine. I really, like thinking about it, I really feel grateful for the body that I was given, that I was able to do and still do all these crazy things. Because I think a lot of times you take that for granted. Like when you're younger,
for sure.
I'm bouncing back, no problem. Like the other day I was telling you, I did a full body like cat stretch on the couch. And I'm like, what did I just do? And I was out. I was out of the gym for 2 days until the pain or whatever.
Big stretch.
Yeah, exactly. So, and not getting so, like for me too, it's not, I have to do some kind of activity every day. Like you said, it's good for the mind and the body. But I'm getting to the point where I realize, like, as long as I'm doing something every day, as long as I'm better than I was yesterday, and moving, it's okay. Like, I don't have to go out and run 6 miles today and then, get on the bike for, 2 hours tomorrow or do back-to-back cross. I don't have to do that anymore. Like I did crazy stuff like that before where every day I was hitting it hard. Now it's just like, do what you can do. Definitely push, but I think there's a lot more mindfulness going into what I do now as I age, because I don't want to have to be in rehab. I don't want to have to go have another surgery.
Well, something else, like we say, not endurance specifically, but endurance as a mindset, or as an analogy where, we say in the gym, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
This whole thing is supposed to be built around longevity.
Right.
Not these hard, fast things. And something else I'm hearing, and it resonates with me, something I think about is I don't want to be left wondering what if. Right, yep. So if you put in the work, you can go to Everest and have a really great time. Right. And like you said, that's going to dictate whether or not you have a really shitty time or it ends up being an amazing experience. Right. And so you just put in the work and you don't have to wonder what if. Right, and absolutely. Your pace might be slower than the person next to you, but at the end of it that you're still capable and you're going to accomplish it. Absolutely. And you're going to walk away with a different perspective. Right, yep. I know you've been kind of relishing in the Everest thing. Is there now it's time to start thinking about the next Is there a next one? Is there anything on the radar? I don't know. It's interesting because my travel companion, my sister-in-law, Sue, she's ride or die, because I'll call her up and I'll be like, do you want to? And she's already like, yeah, what are we doing? We're looking it up right now. Yeah, I mean, there's been times where just like we just do crazy things. Like, for instance, we decided like, the coronation is happening in England. Like I called her up. I'm like, it's going to be May 5th or whatever it was. I was like, do you want to go? That's kind of cool, right? And she's like, hang on. And then we're like, we're texting back and forth. I'm in the parking lot at CVS. And like 15 minutes later, she's like, I just looked up the flights. And I was like, I just looked up a tour group that does tours. She's like, let's do it. And within like 30 minutes, via text, we're taking this trip. So she's always a willing participant, a great person to travel with. She's a great person to definitely travel with. So, we've been talking, and I think like we were both kind of leaning towards doing something that's, how would you put it, more civilized? I don't know. That maybe
you get a shower every now and then. I mean, that was the one thing, I know deviate back, but one thing on Everest, because it was cold. It wasn't as cold as it could have been.
Yeah.
A lot of days, like the nights were really cold. The days were kind of mild.
Yeah.
But at night when you're in those tea houses and, bundle up, they provide blankets and whatnot. And I brought I'm covering up with everything. I'm in all my clothes. It's just, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do another trip where I'm like this cold all the time, because you couldn't take a shower. You could take a shower. You had to pay for a shower, but it's cold water. I'm like, who's taking a shower at 17,000 feet with cold water? Not me. I think we were like, yeah, let's maybe. And sometimes the bathrooms. I mean, I've been to a lot of different places in the world, and I've gone out in Mother Nature, no big deal. And there were places that had indoor bathrooms where I was like, I would rather go outside than go into this bathroom. It was really, like, the one place in particular, which is the only place you can stay really before you summit. So you come up to this place called Gorakshep, and you drop your stuff off at this tea house. Tea houses are just like, rustic bed and breakfasts kind of.
Okay.
They have one common room that's the heated room, where everybody sort of hangs out. They serve your meals there. And then they have just like dormitory style rooms where it's like you're with another person. This place, it had like, oh my gosh, the bathroom was just like, as many places are. It was a hole in the floor, but it was just like,
really brutal.
Oh my gosh. And the whole, like the floor that we were on the lower floor. The whole floor, smelled like septic, like we were just kind of thinking like maybe, we do something where, it's a little more civilized. So we were actually thinking that Scandinavia was one thing that we really want to do. Cool. I know we talked about that.
Yep.
And
we had some amazing experiences in Denmark and Norway.
Yeah. So we thought maybe doing something like that, hitting like the 4 capitals, and
cool.
Of course then there's talk about like, but we could go to the Arctic Circle. We could go.
Oh, it's such an easy.
Island. Yeah.
It's a relatively I don't want to say inexpensive place to travel, but it's not crazy to get there. And then that being a jumping off point, it's so easy to get places.
Yeah.
And Scandinavia is such an outdoor active culture anyway. Like
that
the
appeals
hiking
to me.
and the scenery, the fjords are just absolutely amazing. Obviously, we're going back again here this summer for a month.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So
that's very cool. Yeah, I remember you talking about your cold plunges.
Everybody that's just in their life. Like you do the sauna. It doesn't matter what time of the day. There's hundreds of people just jumping in the rivers.
That's great.
And
that's cool.
Their rivers are so like impeccably clean in their capital cities. You can just jump in, towel off, go right back to work. And that's just part of their culture.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And that's just how clean and breathtaking it can be there.
I definitely love, I don't see myself living here for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I want to be in a place where it is like an outdoor city. I just love that. I love being active. I love being outdoors. I don't like the cold, so this last month or so has been really it's really taken away my motivation to
we're in the tough part of winter.
You just kind of have to talk yourself into it.
Yeah.
So we were talking about that, but then our adventure company, Embark, they send out emails, and they have a trip that is going to Patagonia, and I'm like, I just texted her, I think it was early this morning. I said, did you see that email? I said, that itinerary looks pretty good. So they have that one, Patagonia, and then they have a cool one that they just started on an island off the coast of Portugal.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so you basically, there's 2 volcanoes, inactive volcanoes, and they're not super high or anything. You're not having to take Diamax or anything to go to the top, but you will like summit them, and then you circumnavigate the island, and I guess it's just like you're in that environment, like it's all outdoor environment.
Yep.
And that just seems like a really unique experience. It's going to be hard for me to travel without that kind of like adventure piece as part of it, just to go on a regular tour where you're sitting on like a tour bus or, you're on a train or whatever. That's going to be really hard for me because I do love these adventure trips that we've been going on. And it was weird, like when we were at Everest, it makes you really appreciate you're standing at base camp. It looks nothing like you would imagine base camp would look like because, it's off season. There's no snow there. So, you've probably seen pictures of base camp where you just see these orange tents, like a whole city as far as you can see. Well, that's not there because the snow's not there. But it makes you really appreciate what these guys do. Just to get to Everest, you got to go over like almost 2 mountains to get to Everest to start your ascent. I started to be like, like, I don't know, with the right training and mindset, right? You can and then I'm thinking, I don't know, like having to, like the word death zone don't really appeal to me, especially talking about like, I want to be here for my son in my later years that, maybe I don't take the risk, but I even the cold, like even with the cold, it started to like, I don't know. It's weird.
Well, it's cool that we have, this world has so much to offer. And there's so many different places to see. Some of my friends did Patagonia. Had an amazing time.
Nice.
And we're actually getting ready to go out to Sedona just to do some stuff. And that's
great.
Awesome. Yeah. But
I would like to do more of that, like in the interim, to kind of go out west and partake of.
There's so much out there.
What our country has to offer in terms of outdoor adventures.
Yeah, it's out there.
Yeah,
just got to take advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great. You just have to look for those things and not get so caught up in all the crap that's happening, that stresses you out.
Yeah. Wrapping this up, from fire service to motherhood to explorer, you've had quite the interesting run of things. Is there any way you'd like to wrap it up?
I don't know. I mean,
how about this? We talked about it a little bit earlier. Never wanted to be called necessarily firefighter or firewoman. Mm-hmm. You were very much leaning into a sign of respect as fireman.
Yeah.
You didn't want to be treated differently, and I think I see that, from early on all the way up through now. I'm going to be just as capable as anybody else. Right. I want to be part of the team.
Right.
Yes. There's not going to be a sense of otherism there. So let's wrap it up with that.
Yeah.
How do you feel? No,
exactly. I think that was really, I'm sorry we didn't touch on that because that was a big part of.
Yeah, let's do it now.
Okay. Well, growing up, my brother and I, we used to play, we'd have the helmets on. We even had like a little wagon that was like a fire truck. And so that had little tiny ladders. It was funny. And so I have pictures of me when I'm a kid with the gear on. And I grew up in D.C., but on the weekends we would travel to Carroll County, New Windsor, where my grandparents lived. Mm-hmm. So in New Windsor, there's a huge volunteer firefighter presence. Yeah. And so that was just like part of it. Like you just, what I mean? It was just like, yeah, firefighter. And so I just, that appealed to me, that sense of duty and obligation and danger. And when I was like a little kid, that's like as close to you as you can get to a superhero with, out having to wear underwear on the outside of your tights type thing. So yeah, it was when I was younger, I was like, oh, I want to be a fireman. It's interesting because of everything that's happening now. I don't know if it'd be popular opinion or whatever to say that, but when I got into the fire service, I was like, don't call me a firefighter. That's a legacy to me, in respecting all the people that came before me. I wanted to be a fireman, and I wanted to be not known for my gender. I wanted to be known for the job that I did, and I tried to stress that upon the gals who came behind me, because don't stick out because you're a female. Stick out for the job that you do. Stick out because people know that they can rely on you and trust you. That was really important to me. I kind of went into the academy. Of course, I was the only female in a class of 30-some. So I kind of went in, I wouldn't say with a chip on my shoulder, but I kind of went in thinking oh my gosh, it was very apparent. When I got there, I'm like, then it was like, oh my gosh, yeah, you're going to be the only female there. I hope they accept you. I went through all that. I hope they accept you. I hope you don't make a fool of yourself. But any of that was quickly eradicated. To this day is one of my favorite people in the whole world, Flex. I remember he said, why you got to worry about that stuff? You got here same as us. You did the exact same, tests and everything. And I realized kind of it wasn't just me. Everybody needed to kind of prove themselves, whether you're male or female. Sure. People want to know if you can hold your own and you go into a fire next to this guy. Is this guy going to be able to get you out or whatever, or have your back? So So yeah, I mean, I was in with a bunch of really great guys. We always say that we would do it again. Like I'd go to the academy again, but only if I could go in with those guys. So like during that, I really learned a lot about myself. And funny story, I don't know, maybe we ended on this, but I remember same guy showing up to graduation rehearsal for the academy. And it was over at Frederick Community College. And so we all took our POVs there. And I was like, I mean, I wasn't dressed up. I had at the time makeup on and my hair was fixed and I was in like, you know, nicer street clothes. And I remember like some of the guys were milling about outside, kind of waiting for the whole class to get there. And I drive up and I walk up and I remember Flex saying to me, "Holy shit, guys, Hale is a girl," you know? And to me, I was like, yes, thank you, you know? I sort of really I prided myself on the fact that I was one of the guys, and that I was, like I said, able to do the job, go toe to toe, and, you know, in some cases, like, even be better than some of the guys. But
sure.
That was one of the best times of my life, was doing that job. That's why I'm always like, oh man, you know, I try and like recruit people, like especially females. I'm like, you should try out for the fire department because you'd be a really good candidate. But
yeah.
Whereas like in the beginning, I wasn't really focused on my gender, or, you know, as I got into the fire service, became a senior firefighter, I became more aware of that, like that people were kind of looking to me. But I also realized that a lot of guys were looking up to me too, which was a weird feeling. But I did then sort of like, oh yeah, you're a role model, like for females. Like that was really important to me, to, you know, to be top notch, to be beyond reproach. I mean, I think I did a good job. It was really hard to, that was another thing that was really hard to leave behind, you know.
Yeah. That you've only changed in that it's just in a different venue. When you think of being staff of Odin CrossFit and being a mentor and somebody to look up to just within our community of men and women from all different backgrounds and ages, and then also with what you're doing for your son and with Lenny, and continue to adventure and live the lifestyle that you preach.
Right.
It's all still present. You're still doing amazing things. You're still providing. You're still serving in different ways. It's just taken on a different appeal. You know? So I think it's as good a place as any to wrap up.